I didn't think being away this long would hurt as much as it did. After all, everyone needs a little time off. But what do you do when the city depends on you to bring justice to those whose days are over and long gone? What do you do when the city depends on you to deal with the constant growing crime statistics? The murders, the safety of the everyday citizen. A few months ago, I would have told you there was no murder I couldn't solve. But the other day, I got a call about something disturbing happening in a small city called Amber Hill. I knew there was only one thing I could do. I had to remind myself who I once was. Detective Wags. Back to the grindstone once again. For some reason, I thought my days of hunting down murderers and killers were far gone, but I was naive to think I would ever get out of the business. After all, I'm one of the best, so the calls still come in. I could change the number, but even if I won't admit it, this is my life. For those familiar with my routine when stepping into these new cities, you'd be correct in thinking I stopped by the first food joint in town, the Salty Wolf. I hovered over the listings board, checking through the different jobs. It was always a good way to get a feel for the city. I stumbled into a random apartment building, and it was quite clear that a blind person must have misplaced their screwdriver. Why do I think they're blind? No reason. I grabbed it and planned to return it later, but something more important came up. The reason I was here to begin with. A gunshot echoed through the air, no doubt muffled by some sort of suppressor. If I wouldn't have been standing right in this spot, I don't think I would have heard it. But yet, as I stood there, silence. I knew any second now, hell was gonna break loose. And just as I thought, a random civilian pushed past me, beelining for the Salty Wolf. The enforcers were on their way. I only had a matter of time, and being that I was a little rusty, I needed all the time I could get to examine the crime scene before the enforcers arrived. I took the elevator all the way up to the 12th floor, and even interrogated the owner before I realized this was the wrong apartment. Look, I literally just said I was a little rusty, so cut me a break. And so of course by the time I got to the right apartment, an enforcer was already trying to get the door down. Unfortunately, the only thing I could do was stand to the side and peek in through the doorway. From a distance, I could see some blood on the curtains, but that's really all. As another enforcer showed up to help with the subpar investigation they were about to conduct, I decided to see if the building had a security room. Bingo. Thankfully, no one was inside, but that also meant no access to the computer either. I went through all the drawers, found some change, and don't mind if I do. I tried to look through the apartment records, but sadly I couldn't find anything for apartment 104. When I got back to the crime scene, it was all taped off, and honestly, I wasn't even surprised to find that the enforcers were already gone. There it was, the body. Male, average height, short black hair, lying in a pool of blood directly in the living room. From what I could tell, the victim was shot to death with a rifle between the hours of 8:30 a.m. and 9:45 a.m. There was an ID on the TV next to the body, definitely our victim's. And now we had a name, Barack Cohn. There was still the enormous stain of blood on the curtains, but I couldn't seem to figure out where the shot came from, until I looked a little closer. A tiny hole through the chipped glass. Did it come from directly across the street, somewhere farther, or closer? I felt I had everything I needed so far, but while I was inside, an enforcer started bashing the door. I readied myself with a fire extinguisher just in case. And they were gone. The extinguisher was all for nothing. That's just great. We were back to the outdoors, and of course, the other building sitting directly across from our murdered victim just had to be the Blancora Hotel. Finding where the shot came from in this building would be almost impossible, but that's never stopped me before. I headed for the stairs, but the bar at 6 o'clock was calling for me. No, I'm dead serious, I could hear it talking. Come on, just one isn't gonna hurt you. We miss you. For now, I was stronger than these temptations, and I pushed onto the first set of rooms facing the victim's building. The first room was completely windowless, both in the living room and the bathroom, which marked this one completely off my list. The second room definitely was a possibility. Perfect angle, perfect shot. The thing is, I couldn't find any records or evidence inside, and the renter wasn't home. So for now, I decided to move on. When checking out the third room on this side of the building, there was a key under the mat, so I quietly let myself in, but I was pretty sure someone was here with me. So I had to be quick. It was another room with a perfect vantage point, but while searching through the premise, the owner walked out of the bathroom. Already I was causing more damage than I was stopping. I was done checking rooms for now. I made my way to the roof, but it was clear that anything higher than the 5th floor wouldn't be able to see down into Barack's apartment. And just like that, I was back onto the cold, windy streets. You might ask, well, what's next? You'd be surprised how helpful word of mouth can be. So I went around talking to the people on the street to see if I could get any information. But no one had anything useful. Yet. I decided it was time to stop by City Hall and grab the papers for the investigation, and while I was there I snatched a couple of sync discs. I brought them both to the sync clinic and had them immediately installed. One shortening my height, and one basically giving me more pockets. Walking out of the sync clinic, I didn't feel any shorter, but standing next to the other citizens had me rethinking that pretty quickly. I was back to asking questions, and it took a while, but then I got lucky. A street vendor said they saw someone of average build acting suspicious around Foster Boulevard at 9:30 this morning, which lined up perfectly with the time of murder. And then for the first time, my eyes locked onto some troubling street graffiti. I've dealt with these before. They were symbols for black market weapons dealers. And to think that one was supplying a murderer in this city with deadly firearms, it just motivated me to keep working and put an end to all of this even more. Knowing there was a weapons dealer in this city, I headed for the directory. I don't mean to pat myself on the back, but I consider myself pretty good at picking out names and faces from a crowd. So as I carefully sifted through the dozens of businesses, I wrote down a few that stuck out to me. Poison Warehouse, Reliable Essentials, and Triplex DIY Company. Before checking those out though, I bought a newspaper from the stand, and sure enough the murder had already been written about, and it had exactly what I was hoping for. A witness by the name of Jarek Maddox. I could tell I was getting closer to figuring this all out, but when Jarek's name didn't appear in the directory, I knew it was going to be a little trickier to find him. Normally I don't like using the government database to my advantage, but in this case I had no real way of asking anyone who Jarek was. I needed a picture. When I printed the file, no address, no workplace, which explained why I couldn't find them in the directory, but I had a picture now. And by some insane stroke of luck, I somehow happened to stumble upon Jarek's homeless neighbor, who told me she just saw him today on Santiago Street around 4:30. So I immediately started running through the streets like a madman, seeing if I could recognize Jarek from the picture I had. Sure enough, after rounding a few blocks, I finally found him. I just knew he was going to have something important to say. This was a huge blow to morale. Was I lacking in the prime skills I used to harness as a detective? It felt like I had lost my touch. I really was worried that any moment that radio would go off again, and there'd be a second murder. I was just taking too long. I finally gave in. I grabbed a seat at the hotel bar with a bottle of vodka, and just drank the sadness away. Drank the worry away. But sometimes, in my darkest moments, I prevail. I still had a list of potential dealers, so that was my next objective. One by one, I crossed each one off my list. The first being an underground gambler's den. The second, a black market sink clinic. And the third, Reliable Essentials, seemed like it could have been the place, but when they asked for the password, Blitzkrieg, which was plastered all around the city, was incorrect. Reliable Essentials might have been some sort of black market dealer, but it wasn't the weapons dealer that I was so desperately searching for, which meant it was time to start breaking down doors. After what felt like 100 rooms, I finally broke into what definitely struck me as a weapons business immediately. I snuck in quietly, thinking the place was empty, but I couldn't be more wrong. The sales ledger was right on the counter, and right away there were 5 names that immediately caught my attention, all who had bought either a rifle or ammo within a day of the murder, one being only 25 minutes before. R. Sugimoto. They were going to be the first person I checked, slowly working backwards. But little did I know, I wouldn't have to work backwards at all, because the moment I looked up Sugimoto in the directory, and the address was listed as 301 Blancora Hotel, my stomach sank. I had been there before in the very beginning. All I could ask myself was, did I miss something? I still had the key from earlier when I found it under the mat, so I let myself in during the dark of night while they were sleeping. Another look at the window gave me the same feeling it did last time, that it was a perfect vantage point to take the shot, and I wasn't talking about drinking this time. A crumpled letter stashed away in a drawer listed a variety of individuals. To me, it looked like a hit list, but in the midst of my search, they woke up. Since they were now knocked out, it gave me the opportunity to confirm everything I needed. They had rifle ammo on their person, and 2 final items that sealed the deal. Another note, all of them dead walking, none of them have a clue. And then hidden away in the bathroom, the weapon itself. Their name was Reina Sugimoto, and I was 100% certain that they were our killer. I made a quick trip to City Hall to buy some cuffs, and thankfully returned to her still at home, dazed. Now that she was in cuffs, she flat out admitted to the murders, asking, do I think they're the only killer in the city? And if they didn't want to be shot, they should have closed their curtains. I filled out all the information with what I figured was correct, but either way, I knew I had the right person. And as I made the slow, rewarding walk back to City Hall to turn in the case, I realized I still had what it takes to clean these streets. Just like that, the case of the distant sniper was solved. The murder weapon's new home would be the ocean floor, and even though this case was done and over with, this city was still full of people with evil intentions, and it was my job to make sure they're brought to justice. So as an homage to one of my first solved cases, I grabbed a bottle and set foot to the roof. I only had one thought as I stared down to the cityscape, and that was, it's good to be back. Hey everyone, thanks for sticking around until the end of the video. It really shows me that you love the content and care about supporting the channel. It really means a lot to me, so thank you. I hope you enjoyed this epic comeback. I'll probably do a few more Shadow of Doubt related videos in the future, as well as some review videos talking about some games or demos that I've been interested in, kind of like the newest Star Trucker video that I just put out a little bit ago. Please go check that out if you haven't already. Essentially, people tell me I'm really good at finding certain games that otherwise fly past people's radars, if you get what I mean, so I want to bring attention to those games. Plus, get back into what you guys love, random stories and crazy environments. Just to give you an idea of games that are still on my list, games like RimWorld, Sims, Project Zomboid, and much more. I'm sure some of you are probably wondering about Voices of the Void as well. I know a lot of you were probably loving that series. There was only going to be one part left for the wrap-up of 40 or 50 days, however there many are in the story. But if you didn't know, the game has received a major update and overhaul. Basically, the base looks completely different and there's a bunch of new stuff. The thing is, I said this in a comment too, if I want to update the game and play with all the cool new stuff, I'm pretty sure I have to lose my progress in the process when updating. And no offense, but I just have a lot of other stuff I want to focus on right now rather than replaying that all again, despite how amazing of a game it is, don't get me wrong. However, if you're all cool with it, I'll keep playing on the version I was, I'll wrap up the series with a final part, and then who knows, maybe we'll update the game and do a video in sandbox mode. I'm really not sure. As of right now, that's really all I have to say. Thank you all again for watching the videos. You're all awesome. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe if you haven't already, because you know it all helps me out. I hope you're all having an amazing day, and I will see you all on the next one.